Welcome to devMode.fm, a podcast dedicated to the tools, techniques, and technologies used in modern web development. I'm Andrew Welch from NY Studio 107.
I'm Patrick Harrington from Mildly Geeky in Boston.
I'm Matt Stein from, where am I from? Working Concept in Seattle. Oh, jeez.
And today we have Jack McDade from Statamic. How you doing, Jack?
I'm good. How are you?
Well, first let's settle the score on this. What is the proper pronunciation?
Of pronunciation or of Statamic?
Of both.
I don't care what you call it as long as you use it. The original intention was Statamic, but I think most people say Statamic because that's what it looks like. And I just really don't care anymore.
Well, you invented it. You get to tell people, exactly how they should pronounce it. But let's talk about what it is. So if you were down in Louisville, Kentucky at the Laracon catching wild Pokemon and someone walked up to you and said, hey, what is this Statamic thing? What would you tell them?
I'd say it's a content management system that's designed to be faster and more efficient than most. I don't know if that's a good enough answer.
Perfect.
Is this somebody from Laracon? Can I be technical about it, or is this a person on the street?
Well, you're in the middle of catching Pokemon, so it has to be concise. So I think you did a great job.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
Describing what it is. So let's do a little bit of history on it, and then we'll talk about the features of it, and then we can get into some of the really awesome work that you're doing on Statamic 3. Yeah, sweet. So where did the idea of doing, what gave you the crazy idea that you should make your own CMS anyway? What happened?
I don't know. That's if I could go back and undo it. No. I feel like it's all right. So a CMS is something like every developer is supposed to build at some point and then usually throw it away and be like, I'm never doing that again. And so I just never gave up. And so I'm still doing it. But so the main idea behind Statamic was I'd done a lot of expression engine sites back in the 2008 and 9, 2010.
The good old days.
The good old days of the internet. And I think I kept running into the same problem that I'm sure everyone who's built a site with a CMS has, is once you launch the site and then you need to make changes to it and the client doesn't stop updating content, you're like, how do I tell them to don't edit the site so I can take the database down, bring it back down to local, put the content in, make nice changes and put the database back up under production. And then, oh no, they've edited again, even though I told them not to. And so I have to bring the database back down and do the changes again. That cycle of how I can't keep my development site in sync with the production site.
Yeah. I mean, the whole building a CMS is great. Everything about it is awesome. The thing that ruins it is clients. Right? Yeah,
that's exaczly right. If we didn't have clients, then we wouldn't need as many different platforms and tools. Right. I'd be doing something else. So I thought, all right, well, is it possible that I could do everything without the database, and that way I can use version control and just push changes up to the server? And so went about building Statamic and seeing what the limitations would be, what can we do without a database. And it turns out it's really almost nothing. We were able to recreate everything, and it's a lot harder. If we just didn't do the flat file thing, we probably would be making more money and spending less time. But I wanted to solve the problem, and it works really, really well, and it's made a lot of developers really happy. So I don't regret it. It sounds like I'm complaining, but it's actually been a pretty awesome ride, and we're bigger and better than ever.
Well, so you kind of looked around and you said, well, hey, there's this thing called Git, and it does versioning. Why don't I kind of make that the CMS? Is that kind of what you're going for here?
Yeah, pretty much. There was Jekyll had just come out, those early static site generators had just started to show up in 2012 when I started building Statamic, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I don't have to worry about. So there was, what was it? Jekyll and Stacy, I think was Hugo, right? And I said, these are great, but I can't hand these off to a client. There's no control panel, so it has to have a control panel.
Right.
And so if I have a control panel, but can I do the Jekyll, Stacy, Hugo thing without, but run it through, a framework? Can I use PHP and have this happen live on the fly dynamically? And I said I wanted a static site, but I wanted to run it dynamically, and so I took the word static and dynamic and Statamic. That's where I came from, and that's where it comes from.
And that actually always confused me, that Statamic, it's not really a static generator though.
No,
right?
It's not.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I've never decided if it was worth like an educational campaign to like just tell the world Statamic is not a static site generator. Like, but it's not. It's a full blown CMS, and it just works like every other CMS that you're used to, except the content is not stored in the database. It's stored in flat files, and then all those files are kind of compiled into like a JSON API kind of concept that then is queried by like the different dynamic features that your site has, like, tags to pull through your entries and like forms and users and all that stuff.
But it's in the name. I guess that's what confused me. And speaking of names, by the way, Jack McDade is like a fantastic pirate name. You know, like I could definitely see someone be there lies the grave of Jack McDade. I could totally see that.
Shores of the I don't know.
I could totally see. He told everyone
there be no databases here, matey.
Exactly. Matt, you
can walk the plank.
You were gonna say something earlier, Matt. I kind of cut you off. I thought so.
I mean, I have a question. But
do it.
I mean, when did you decide? So you'd figured out that this could be done. When did you decide? Okay, when did it go from like a private experiment to something that you were actually going to release and decide to maintain?
I think it went from like didn't exist to selling it in like 4 months. It was pretty fast, and in hindsight, it was pretty like unfinished. But we wanted, it solved the use case that we had. And as soon as it did the things that I felt it was important that it did, which was, have pages and have like collections where you could have blog posts or news posts or like whatever. And it worked. And, it was quick and fast. We put it out there and we slapped a price tag on it. And it actually sold really well, like immediately. And I got super excited. And then like after the initial, then like the slow hockey stick of
the opposite hockey stick.
The unhockey stick, the sad stick.
And what was the original pricing on it? Was it like $19 or something?
I think it was $29 for a personal license and $99 for a commercial.
All right.
And like our competition was priced like they're still around, like Kirby and Perch were like right in between. They had like 59 or like 79 euros. And I thought, all right, $99. That'll be like the pro version. And then I really want people to use it who aren't going to spend money on their site. And so we had that personal license for $19.
Right.
And then down the road, we added some like validation. And it turns out like 80% of our users were using personal licenses instead of commercial. Yeah. I was like, what did we do?
Whoops.
Like it turns out we should have feature blocked that, right? So you get more features with the pro version. That's, one of those things you learn over time.
Yeah.
I think you blew Matt's fuzzy little brain when you said that you went from idea to release in 4 months. Because Matt, you have a little release anxiety, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just don't. I have mountains of private things I don't release, and one of my goals this year is to actually just stop relying on them or make them public. And
Jack,
who cares?
Yeah, Jack, it sounds like you were like, well, it solves the thing for me, so let's see if it solves it for anyone else, right?
That's it. We'll just test it live. Like your user research is, will people spend money on it? And when they did, I said, okay, well now we do support. We're like, oh, you have a bug, we'll fix the bug. And it was fine. Like there was weird bugs, and there was, in hindsight, like we probably should have fixed some stuff that we didn't test or like whatever. But if we waited forever, we maybe wouldn't have even got it out. And I'd rather have something out than nothing. And it's different. Once it's out, you have to treat it differently, right? So you can't just like push new features out that are broken. You have to take more time. And so our release cycles have grown a lot slower, but it already does so much that it doesn't. You don't have to iterate so quickly.
What you said reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from someone I don't even know. I just follow her on Twitter. Is Charity Majors. She has a quote that says, "I test in production and so do you." It's so beautiful because it's so true,
it's true.
So when was the actual, let me pin down the release date because I'm a little bit fuzzy on it. Like what was the actual like year and month that Statamic was first out?
June 19th, 2012.
And you're never going to forget that, right?
No, it's my dad's birthday, and I know it was 2012 because that's just one number I need to remember, and it's not that hard.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
So we're coming up on 7 years, right?
Wow.
Carry the one.
So do you have the 7-year itch yet?
Oh yeah. But I just ignore it. It's fine. I have plenty of like side projects and hobbies to take care of that. And we're Statamic 3, we're working pretty hard on that. Been on that for almost a year now, and it's like everything I never thought Statamic could be. And so yeah, it's exciting and it's new and fresh. And yeah.
So I want to get to that. There's tons of stuff I want to talk to you about for Statamic 3. But I also want to talk a little bit about how the heck does some of this stuff work if you're doing, like, let's say you've got blog entries and you want to do what in a CMS where you had like a SQL database or something, where you wanted to do a search to find all of the blog entries that were tagged such and such. How do you do a query when you just have static files? Like, how does that work?
Sure. So we kind of optimize around common patterns, like to have completely arbitrary query. Like we don't match SQL queries one-to-one, but we match use cases, right? And I think that's the key. And so we'll create, and we have the caching system. We call it the stash. That's where we kind of take all of your content. They're all YAML files and Markdown or, textile or HTML, whatever you save it as. You can customize how your data is stored and what you work with it as. We compile all that into the stash, and then we create indexes based on that data. And so we know, like, when you have tags, for example, if you want to like pull by tags, like we separate all the taxonomies and we store those, and the IDs, like all the entries get IDs injected into them. And then we can just store like indexes and references to them. And when you want them, like we can pull them really fast, unless your site is huge. Like, honestly, if your site is 10,000 entries or more, you shouldn't be using Statamic, at least Statamic version 2. We have, version 3, and we'll get to that later. We have new stuff. But yeah, like those indexes actually work really, really well. And they are per taxonomy, per collection, and you can sort and filter and order. And, like more often than not, like you'll never notice the difference that there's no database there.
But if you have an index, it sounds like you're kind of building your own little database.
Yeah, but it's built on the fly, right? So you don't have to ever think about maintaining your normalized database. You don't have auto-indexed IDs and all that stuff. You just edit your files, and then when you launch your site, like if Statamic will detect if you have files changed, and it'll just like recompile your cache, and you can do that. That process, like the cache compilation, the bigger your site, the longer it takes. Like on a small 100-page site, I mean, it's like a split second, but on a big site, it might be 2 or 3 seconds or 10 seconds. As long as you're not doing that every request, like you're fine, right? So there may be a request here or there that is slow, but basically the once that is built, the site is really snappy.
So here's the part that I don't understand, and I don't get it. Is, let's say I've built my awesome Statamic site, and my content editors are logging into it and they're editing stuff, and that's writing out YAML files with their content or whatever. How do I then get that back down into my local dev or staging environments? Because wouldn't that be, if everything is checked into Git, wouldn't that effectively be changing the Git repo? And then when we do a deploy, it's going to complain about the fact that files have changed and they're not checked in and yada, yada, yada. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple ways you can do that. The easiest is we have an add-on called, it's just a free little add-on you can install. It's called Spock. And Spock is a little commander that listens to all the file change events in your system. So if you save a blog post, you upload an image, you edit your homepage or whatever, it'll see that event and it will run a git commit for you and then push that back to your repo. So
that's cool.
As if you're working on a staging server or a production server, it's just like commit, push, all those changes are going up. You can look back, see what everybody did. You can configure to use their usernames and their avatars and all that stuff. And so that stuff happens. And if you go to push your changes from dev, just do a git pull rebase, git push, you're done.
Right. I mean, that's really neat. So does Spock use, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Is it like the IO weight notify or something like that? to watch files?
It uses, I mean, we're running Laravel, and we've got Fly System and Symfony Process kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting, and we'll just, we scan like the inodes or whatever on the folders to see if there's anything changed inside, and we trigger stuff that way. But yeah, like in the control panel, specifically when Spock is working, when you click save, like we manually, or Statamic will automatically fire a content changed event. And then that payload will kind of determine what happens next.
And the reason I'm asking is I wrote something many, many years ago for someone that essentially he wanted to be able to just upload videos and audio files and then have it automatically kick off a process that would then transcode these things. Right?
Sure.
And I used something called INotifyWeight.
Okay.
Which it's like a Unix package that will just watch this. But it makes sense now that I think about it that you wouldn't use that because you don't know what the server environment is going to be.
Right. That's a more complicated thing for the, kind of this quote unquote average developer to set up. So I mean, when files change, they generally are changed because a manual action has taken place, like save or upload, like an actual user action in the control panel. And then we just fire an event at that point, and then we run, a command line event or a command line command. A Symfony process command that will do that git commit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Patrick, you were going to say something before? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's just really impressive. And the fact that all that stuff could just flow back up into Git is pretty cool. Now I was just waiting to see how long it's going to be until you ask what the SEO plugin scene looks like over in their marketplace.
Oh, me? No, I actually contacted Jack a little while ago and said, hey, what do you think? Should I port this thing over?
What did I say? Jack, no, please don't compete with my first party add-on.
No, you said you said nothing.
Really? I did not reply to you?
No, you never wrote back. So I'm like, okay. I don't care.
You should do it. That's my official response now, is you should do it.
Well, now I want to do it just because I think you don't want me to do it. So now I want to
do it.
No, I'm totally interested. So what kind of caught my attention and got, like, I'd known about Statamic for a while, but what kind of got me re-engaged and interested was I saw you were doing a series of blog posts where you were talking about stuff that you were working on. And it was really cool, not just from the point of view of, oh, wow, I didn't know that this was going to be in Statamic, but also just from the point of view of like a developer's journal, in terms of like, this is what we're building. And it's obvious that you're very excited about the stuff that you're building. I think the first post that really got me interested was the stacks on stacks.
On stacks.
So we're going to, on stacks, like Fox on socks, right?
Yes.
So we're going to start talking about Statamic 3. So what are some of the cool things that you're doing with Statamic 3? Let's talk about the stacks. Like, what are stacks?
Sure.
What is that?
I mean, stacks are just a relatively simple UI paradigm that I don't even think we invented it there. We've seen it before, but
no one has invented, like, everything is borrowed from everything.
New, but you kind of find patterns and you use them in new creative ways, and then they feel fresh, right?
All that really matters is who does it best.
That's it. Like, or what really matters is it solving the UX problem that you have, right? Like, it doesn't.
The Apple iPod was not the first MP3 player, but it was the first one that did it really well.
Exactly. So so stacks are really, they're not unlike a modal window, but they're full height and almost full width, and they slide in from the right-hand side of the screen and cover up most of your screen. And then if you open up another one, it will slide over that one and on top. And the whole idea behind that is if you're in an entry, so you're editing your homepage and you have like featured articles that you're picking from a list, right? You want to pull up your like news articles, and you want to edit that news article instead of like opening it in another tab and then like making a change and then saving it and like refreshing the first entry and like doing that whole thing. You just click it open, you click edit, and it will slide in on a stack, and you can edit that entry right there. And if you're like, oh, actually I want to edit this image, and so you click edit image, that'll slide in on top. You edit the image, you click save, it slides off to the right. Then you're back to the entry you're editing, you click save, it slides back off to the right, and you're back to where you started. So it's like contextual stacking so that you can work through your workflow the way that you think about it, and then come back, back through that tangent that you were taking to your original thing. And, you're probably not going to get 8 or 10 deep in the real world. It works. It goes to like 12 before you can't even see the leftmost one. And you can.
How far do you let people go, or is there a limit?
There is. I'm trying to remember. We may.
If I had a super wide screen, could I put like 20 up there?
Yeah, you probably could. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to, but there was no reason for us to say, well, after 13 you can't, because maybe there's a use case for 14, and so at some point you just realize, what am I doing? Like, I should probably just click pop open and just like work on that thing.
So if you watch and we're going to link to some of your blog posts and the videos so where people can see this, but if you see this stacks in action, it's really slick. It's really slick because you're editing something and then, I want to look at this thing that I'm referencing in the post or whatever that I'm editing. You just click and it just slides in, and then you've got the context right there, and then you can slide it right back out. Yeah. And I'm going to make the most random reference possible regarding what kind of this reminded me of when I first saw it. So I've got kids, and one of their favorite things is this Captain Underpants book.
La la la. Yeah.
Yes. And he's got this fliporama thing where you flip back and forth between the pages, where you go from one context to another. And you can kind of emulate that with the stacks because you can flip to one context and then back to the other one.
Yeah, it's true. I love it.
You could do a Captain Underpants animation using stacks.
Yeah, we could. We should. In fact, when you open a stack, it really should go tra-la-la. That should definitely happen until we get sued, and then we'll just take it out.
You'll corner the market of very young content editors.
I mean, you got to start young, right? I mean, what was it? Cigarette ads back in the day? Be like, hey, here's some candy Marlboros, and then
they all had like a friendly mascot or whatever.
It's a terrible idea.
But I just thought stacks was really cool because it was one of those things that I was like, I've always wanted this, but I didn't know that I did.
Yeah,
until I saw it.
In hindsight, it's like, that is so obvious. Like, why did nobody come up with I don't mean to be insulting. Like, it just immediately made sense, and it made me wonder why more things aren't doing exactly that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't that tricky to build compared to other things we've done. It was, a day or two,
right?
In terms of like actually just getting it done and working. But yeah, sometimes the right solution seems so simple once you've found it, and then that's when you're like, this was a good one. This was a good solution. You're like, why didn't I think of that? And
so did you have that problem in mind and you were looking for ways to solve it, or was that just one of those things that you kind of saw something somewhere and had a sudden idea for it?
I was trying to find the right pattern for inline editing. So I wanted to be able to pop open an entry and edit data in it, and we started with a little pop out that was kind of like a modal, but it was attached, like absolutely positioned to the thing that you clicked on. And then you got to deal with, does it pop up or does it pop down or does it pop left or pop right? And what does it do on mobile? And does it go full screen? I'm like, why am I working so hard to make this small little window be in the right place when I could probably just use more space? I'm like, what if we just slid it in from the right? And then I started looking around for like, what other sites do that? And I couldn't really find anything. And then I forget what it was. It was some like AWS thing, or
it was Captain Underpants.
It was Captain Underpants Fliporama, and I was like, "That's it." Something jogged my memory, and after we did it, I had found a couple other apps that were doing something close to it, and off the top of my head, I can't remember what they are, but yeah, it worked, and it was a good simple solution.
And the other thing I love about the solution is that this is a case where animation adds so much to it. In other words, just seeing the thing kind of animate in, it's not annoying, it's not gratuitous. It really gives you context and helps you understand exactly what is going on.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. Like, I really enjoyed that part of it.
There are a number of people out there that are really into cards. I remember the Palm Pre, the last Palm Pilot, the Palm phone.
Yes.
WebOS was really big on cards, and there's like a legion of people out there that are dying for more card-based interfaces. You should really look at that. Just what they were doing, and then if those are potential customers.
Yeah, sure.
People that are
get them on board.
There's like 3 dozen of them out there.
Get them on board the Statamic Express, right?
That's right. I will track them down individually, and I'll pick them up in my sedan and bring them to a workshop and buy them Chipotle.
But what I used to do for solving the kind of problem you're talking about is I would actually open the CMS up in two windows a lot of the time, right?
Right.
Where at one I'd have the thing I'm editing, and the other, if I needed to reference other stuff, that would reference it there. And that's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of lame.
Yeah, it's not that it doesn't work, right? And it's not like what we've done is revolutionary to the point where, can you believe it? Now you can edit two things at once. You're still only editing one thing at a time, but you're doing it in a way that keeps you in the flow and helps contextually work through what you're doing. I'm editing this, and because I'm editing this, now I'm editing that. And you have less chance of like editing the second thing and forgetting to go back to the first thing and making your update. And those changes like sync in right away. So if you need to edit a title and you click save, then the title, you're looking at that updated title on the first homepage or whatever. Yeah, it's just nice.
And I think solutions like this they're kind of like bugs. Like everything is obvious in hindsight, but the hard part is actually getting there.
Yeah,
And
it always is.
Because there's so many things that I look at them and I'm like, oh, of course, that's the way to do it. But the hard part is getting there.
That's the hardest part of, and then naming it also.
And then naming it.
It. I'm pretty sure there's features we've built that we couldn't come up with a good name for, so we just never released them. It's like,
because this totally should be called Flipperama,
comma, tra-la-la. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, I thought that was a really, really nice content solution. And that got me starting to look at this a little bit more closely. And something else that you've been doing for a while in Statamic is conditional fields.
Yes.
But it sounds like you're taking that kind of to the next level with Statamic 3. Statamic 3?
Yeah, sorry. Definitely taking it to the next level. And okay, so
what are they? Tell us what conditional fields are.
Sure. So a conditional field is rules that you can apply to your field set. That's what we call your list of custom fields that you've configured to blank an entry out of. Yeah. You can set rules on any given field to be shown or hidden until another field has a particular value or doesn't have a value or is greater than or less than something else. And so you can set those links between fields. And so, for example, say you want to add a hero image. So you have a button that says add hero image, and then you click that and a bunch of other stuff pops up. Instead of having 25 fields, visible on in your field set, you can have 7, the 7 required things. And then you can start to nest logically those extra fields that are only important when you're doing something else. So maybe it's
how complicated can these conditionals be?
In V3, basically infinitely complicated, to the point where if you need to do something we didn't build into the interface, you can write your own JavaScript method to reach into the Vuex store and do whatever you need to for a comparison. And that tends to be what it is, right? You're showing or hiding something when some condition evaluates true or false, or greater than or less than. So that's what we've done. In version 2, we had conditional fields, but they only work on your top level. So like text fields, text areas, WYSIWYG, asset fields, whatever. But we have these meta field types, which are field types that you can put field types into.
Containers.
Containers. Yeah, exactly. We have the replicator, which is similar to Craft. I think they call it the matrix. We have the grid, which is more like a table-based thing. We have Bard, which is kind of like a WordPress Gutenberg-style block-based editor. And
we're getting to Bard. Okay,
later. Cool. We'll get there. All right. So any of those fields inside of a field, you can't do conditions on those in Statamic 2. And the reason being is the way Vue.js 1, how technical is this podcast? Can I talk about one directional prop mutation?
It's very technical, and you pulled back the veil and mentioned that you're using Vuex, which is telling me you're using Vue. So let's go there, man.
Okay, cool. So in Vue 1, which is what we're using in Statamic 2, because it's been out for a couple of years, and we started using Vue when it was in pre 1.x.
0.08.
The data can go two ways in Vue 1. You can pass it down, you can pass it up, you can mutate props. And because of that, you can start to build yourself into a box that you can't get back out of again. A given field type knows what its parent's data is, what its data is. And so the siblings in that tree could know what each other are. But once you get down deeper into that tree, you have to go all the way back up and over and all the way back down again in a way that's basically impossible to write clean code to find a way to write a condition.
Yeah.
So in Statamic 3 with View 2 and using Vuex, we now have this beautiful object store that you just can reach into and explore. And, we also pass in like the local context. So whatever like field that you're in, if it's a meta field like a matrix or like a replicator or bard, what the sibling fields are, and so you can write like a simplified syntax and keep that simpler. But basically, there's no limit to like going up and down and around in the tree to write a condition that does what you need to show or hide your fields. That's the long and the short of it.
Yeah, because, and part of this is driven by View 2, I would imagine, and that they changed the way that data flows, right? It's all
right. It's all one directional now. It goes top down. And if you want to push it back out, you admit an event and it goes back to the top. Or you push it into the Vuex store. Right.
And then that then gives you the better pattern of using an actual store, and now you're benefiting from it.
Exactly.
I think it's really cool to see situations like this where lower level frameworks make architectural decisions, and then it ends up with a much better product for the things that build on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like those 10x, 100x, 1000x things where the sort of things that, Carl Johnson, who runs, the local general store somewhere in like Tennessee, now can like upload his menu in a way that he doesn't have to show his desserts if he doesn't have. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's who's going to benefit from View 2's features.
We use the example of Billy D with his buffalo tan and hide business that he has out there in Nebraska.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
I was going to say you're using Andrew's hypothetical characters to illustrate the.
How dare you? How dare you come on my show and use my hypothetical characters?
Should we go back to the pirates?
Go back to the pirates.
If the plank be longer than 9 meters.
But conditional fields, like it's something. So it's something that is badly needed in craft, and there are like third-party solutions or whatever, but conditional fields are again one of those things that you don't necessarily think about it immediately, but when you start going down that information architecture rabbit hole where you're building stuff out and you're thinking about the actual person that is going to have to interact with this thing,
right?
Conditional fields make a huge difference from the content authoring experience, right?
They do. Yeah, it becomes, it can take a form that is so unwieldy, they're afraid to break anything when they look at it, and break it down to just the important stuff and have it kind of unfold as they go. And I think that experience, it is up to the developer to implement. So not, if someone has a really small budget or doesn't have a lot of time or aren't that experienced, they may not be able to take advantage of it, but those that can will just make so much better of an experience for their content authors that I hope everybody actually gets a chance to use it.
Yeah, this is something I've been saying for a really long time, is that it's my opinion that good software is deep, it's not broad.
Yeah.
In other words, broad would be you provide every possible field and option that they might need for this particular entry, whatever it is.
Right.
And sure, it's all there, but it's very broad, right? Deep would be you use something like conditional fields that people can drill down to the same level of specificity.
Right.
But it only exposes what they need as they need it, and kind of drilling down into that deep authorship.
Right. I mean, when it comes down to it, most data is, it's a string or an array, and the array is going to be an array, array of strings, right? So you don't need to have these super complicated, super field types if you can tailor the experience and just collect the data you need to, and then assemble it on your template level, right? I think that will let you do way more with 25 or 30 different field types than 290 highly specialized ones that most of which are never used, which means they're never updated, which means they fall apart over time, right? So
yeah, and it's funny because this is something that we kind of intuitively know just from like the everyday experience of living. We wake up in the morning and we have a sink that has the things that we need immediately right there. And then in the medicine cabinet, there's stuff that we sometimes need. And then in drawers down below, we've got compartments where they're, you know what I mean? And we kind of intuitively will put things in boxes and section them away in such a way that we don't have to deal with the complexity unless we need it.
It's important.
Yeah. So, I mean, that sounds really awesome.
What other features jumped out at you? Let's keep talking about them.
Well, yeah. So that's what we're going to do. So the one that I want to talk about is that you touched on earlier is Bard.
Okay.
So what is a Bard?
Sure.
First of all, a
Bard is ultimately it's a text editor.
No. The word itself. What is a bard?
Oh, what is a bard? A bard is like a minstrel. It is a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
It is,
right.
I'm a big like Dungeons and Dragons guy, and I love playing fantasy games and role-playing games. And like the bard is that like cool character. Or maybe not so cool, but is that character who tells a story, who can communicate with people in a way that nobody else gets to, right? And so that's what I decided to call our big, content editor, the thing that you use to write your stories in. And,
But isn't like in Dungeons and Dragons, isn't the bard kind of like the, what is it? The blue shirt or whatever from Star Trek, like one that dies immediately?
No, absolutely not.
The red shirts.
Okay.
Yeah,
red shirts. Sorry.
No, the bard's cool.
Oh my God, I'm going to have a bunch of angry Star Trek.
They have great spells like hideous laughter and,
Okay.
heat metal. It's pretty sweet.
All right. So tell us about the bard.
I always thought it was going to be Shakespeare. I'm surprised too.
Oh, right.
He's the bard. Yeah.
Shakespeare is like the quintessential real world bard, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a specific bard.
No, he is the bard.
So that was like a nickname? Or
yeah.
Capital T, capital B.
Yep.
Nice.
Anyway, what is it in Statamic?
Sure.
What is bard in Statamic?
Bard in Statamic is your
Statamic.
Your it could be the one, if you're going to have one field, that's going to be the one you're going to use. And it starts with text, and you have your you got your toolbar with bold and italic and like insert link and all that kind of stuff. But as you're writing, and it's kind of like Gutenberg in WordPress or Medium, where as you're writing, you can, if you start a new paragraph, you get this little button that says plus, and you click it, and then out come a bunch of options. And those options are totally up to you, whatever you put in there. We call them sets. They're bard sets, and they are groups of fields that would be inserted anytime you want. So if you want to have like a photo gallery in the middle of your article, you set your asset field and then maybe a caption and then, a link to another thing or whatever fields are important for your gallery. You would group those up, put them in a set, put that set in your bard field. And then as you're writing, you can click add photo gallery and bloop, it'll just drop a box in and you can upload all your photos and fill that stuff out. And you can drag and reorder and move that block around anywhere you want in your content. And then, you can collapse that down to a nice little like slim little box, and then keep writing and add any other sets you want, block quotes, anytime you want to break up that markup and be able to do something more, specialized with it in your kind of long form content, it's perfect for that. People have built like page builders where, you can do the entire page of a custom like landing page in it, where you insert a hero header, and then you got your background image and like a color overlay and like your blend mode and then your text and your subtext. And you can, in V3, you can have all the conditional fields along with that as well. And then, you've got your body content, and you've got your video embed or audio embed, and just all that stuff gets dropped into that content. And you don't have to, use a WYSIWYG field where it's going to drop your markup in, and then later, if you would redesign your site, you have to go update 9,000 entries. Well, that's what I was about to say is why are we using this for long form content, and why are we using a content builder? Why don't we just give people a WYSIWYG field and they can just dump whatever they want in there? Yeah, because then
what are the downsides?
Oh, the clients are going to ruin it.
Well,
right. So, if you have too many controls and you let them, if you let a user have all the buttons, like insert a table, then like put a video in there and then like change the color, then it all gets hard coded to those particular sizes, widths, colors, fonts, or whatever you give them control for, or control over rather. And then you lose consistency. So by breaking that stuff out into fields, into groups of fields, you don't need to decide what it looks like, how it's controlled. You can do that on the template level, and you can restyle it however you need to. And, both your markup and your CSS. So it gives you ultimate control over the presentation of whatever you need that data for.
Yeah, we love our clients, so we're not.
We have to protect them from themselves, and it's ultimately everybody is happier because of it. The client doesn't want to make the site look uglier. They're just trying to I know that this needs to be important, and all I have access to is like fonts, so I'll just pick this other one so it stands out. And it's like, I understand, but if you had call out, you had a call out set, you just like drop that in, you put your text in there, then, then I can style that in a way that is important, and we can change that if we need to, and all of that stuff makes it really flexible.
Yeah, because all of the clients we work for are very smart, presumably, in whatever their area of expertise is, but they may not be designers.
Right, totally.
Right? So they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And it reminds me of us getting home after we've left the kids alone for the past 3 or 4 hours and just like, what did you do? Like, oh my God.
Well, I was
Because
making
we've all
marshmallows and
right.
Oh,
And there'll be a story and it'll make logical sense, why they're standing there in their underwear with burnt marshmallows on the sink, whatever. And it'll make sense when they retell it.
Right. I mean, that's
but the
like
same
Breaking
thing kind
Bad.
of happens.
Like it makes sense one step at a time, but oh boy, where did you go? Like you shouldn't have.
Yeah, how did you get here?
You should not have ended up.
But it's really true that if you just gave people a free-form field where they can enter whatever they want, you're really not being fair to them.
Right.
I don't think you're doing your job. Your job is to design something for them, give them a design pattern, give them structure. And if you just say, here you go, like do whatever you want, I don't think you're doing your clients right.
And that's what CMS is like Statamic and Craft and a couple others. Those are the type of projects that they're perfect for. If you have $210 to launch a site and you have 4 hours, maybe you should use WordPress, slap a theme in, and then just just dump your stuff into it and last as long as you can, then throw it away and build another one next year when it's like untenable. So, we'd solve the.
You could do that, but please don't
do that.
There are better solutions, I think, for that type of site, and we're going to be talking to Vlad from Webflow, who I think for that type of site, I think does a really, really nice job with that. So we're going to forgive you for mentioning the WP word on the show.
It felt wrong when it came out, but I'm trying to show that I'm open-minded.
Oh, you've definitely proven you're super open-minded about it. But okay, so then I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I'm reading these blogs. I'm like, this is really neat. Like, I feel like I'm on this journey with you as you're telling me about how you're building. And it's not just you, right? You've got a team of people that are building this, right? So when I'm saying you, if you're listening to this and you're one of the people that is helping to build it, I'm talking about it's the royal you.
Yeah.
Okay. And I feel like I'm on this journey with you as you're documenting the stuff that you're adding, and I'm learning about the cool features that you're adding. And then you start talking about Statamic.
Just pick
Statamic.
one.
He told you it's okay.
I don't know.
It's fine.
I'm a deer in headlights. I don't know which way to go, right or left. I'm not sure. And then I start reading about Statamic at scale with Spiegel. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And the fun thing is that you did this in a 2-blog post where you teased people in the beginning about what it was, and then you kind of did the reveal later on. But why don't you talk about what you revealed in that blog post? Because I thought that was really interesting.
Sure. The reveal blog post was kind of the culmination of a year and a half worth of collaboration and kind of concepting a new approach to storing data at scale with Statamic.
Hold on. The whole thing took you 4 months in the beginning. What's going on?
What? Oh no, that was back in 2012 when you could just build a blog. Like we could do more than now. Yeah. This one thing took way longer than the initial, the initial 1.0. But one of the problems that we wanted to solve with Statamic, and in fact that Spiegel, the German news media company, solved for us, I guess, in a way, Statamic 2 is, we have this control panel. It does everything that, that apparently that a publishing company of that size needs. And the one thing it doesn't do is scale to the size of that organization. So when the way...
Well, for context, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
help me.
For context.
Help me tell a story.
Spiegel, how big is that in Germany? Like an analogy for...
They're the New York Times of Germany.
There you go, right? So
they were there with Edward Snowden for that. Like major respected publication.
Super respected. They're the 483rd largest website on the internet. It's top 500. That's pretty big, right? That's a large. That's a large site. It's a lot of content.
When you talk about scale, I just want to give people the gravitas that this really is this is some serious scale here.
Yeah,
right?
You don't really have scale much bigger than that. I mean, anything at that size is they're all sort of in the same sort of territory. So they they looked at Statamic as a solution for their scaling problems. And what they saw what I hoped that we could get to one day, but with a team of 3 people, I wasn't sure we'd ever get there, especially and convince someone at a size of that scale, or a scale of that size rather, to believe in us, right? That's kind of like, there's one thing to build a product. It's another to like convince someone to try it and actually use it. And so they had found us, had prototyped the stuff out, and said, "Hey, here's what we did. Would you like to come over and see it?" I'm like, "Yes, we would like to see what it is that you've done."
Absolutely,
I'm very curious. And so, the flat file thing is great to a point, but it does, if you're going to have to basically parse all of your entries when you update the site, or all the entries in a collection, or however different ways we can split that up, there's going to be a point when you hit like hundreds of thousands or millions, you're just going to sit there and sit the edge. The compilation process is just too long. That's just not feasible. The static.
Well, and Unix file systems also have a limit in terms of. I mean, I guess you could solve it by having
one file per
subdirectory.
directory. Yeah. You can't have more than 10,000 files in one folder or one directory.
Right.
You run out of inodes, and I know about all the stuff that I never thought I would ever have to.
Never wanted to know.
Never tried to put 10,000 files in one folder, but you can't.
Yeah, now you
can't do 10,001. It's impossible. So when you want to get to that scale, you need to have a different stack, right? And so what they ended up doing was staying with the flat file solution, but they stored the files differently, one file per folder, and then they would push those files into that, and they would be able to conversion control all that stuff. And then they would simultaneously push through a worker queue out to an Elasticsearch instance, and that Elasticsearch instance would hold the most recent 100,000 entries, and then they would use that as an API and pull that back into the control panel to feed the data back in. And so what they were doing in Statamic 2 was they were kind of hijacking our save and hijacking our load, where they would bring the data back in and convert it and fake it so that Statamic thought it was coming in as YAML so that I could parse it back to PHP. And then it would like take the YAML, like save it, and then move it. So they kind of like built like a pre and post process and made it work. And it actually worked really well. It's just, I wouldn't want to recommend other people do that. It just feels really janky. And so we started like, what would it take to actually build this in as part of the core? Would this be like a top-down approach, or bottom-up approach, or middle-out approach? I don't know. And so what we took our entire data layer, the way we work with the data, and we made it so the control panel doesn't know where it comes from at all. It's completely abstracted. And so you can write an interface to the pattern that the control panel expects, and your data now can come from anything you want. It could come from MySQL or Redis or Mongo or Firebase or Elasticsearch or whatever. And, everything will work. You just need to write like a, get by ID. You have to write like this, half a dozen, or maybe it's a dozen methods that work out those queries. And then your entire, system will kind of work on whatever data store you want. And
so in PHP parlance, you wrote an interface, and any data provider or whatever you want to call it has to implement these methods. I think this is the most amazing part of what you're working on for Statamic 3, because it reminds me of what Gatsby, for instance, is doing with their content mesh, in that both of you are kind of saying, I know you're a modern website, you're a modern web app, data comes from a whole bunch of different places. We don't care. We have this like neutral API that we query, and then you can have as many data sources as you want. It can come from files. It can come from Redis. It can come from a third-party API. Like, we don't care.
Exactly.
And it's super, super amazing.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? So we have like Statamic really is 2 different applications. There is like the kind of the front end system, the templating and the tooling, the views and like their tags and stuff that let you pull all the content out. And then there's the control panel that is the authoring experience. And obviously they talk to each other because they use the same data, but you really could like split them in half and like have one without the other. And this lets you use either or both in whatever combination that makes sense for you. And it's just really exciting to see all of the potential use cases for it, and the sort of organizations that can take advantage of all the hard work that's gone into it. I mean, we wrap a lot of amazing open source packages for different field types and for all sorts of really cool stuff. And by bringing them all into one place, and just kind of wrapping it up with convention and configuration. There's so much that you can do with it. And it seemed like an obvious choice where we can now serve new audiences with one product. And, you may not use our Antlers syntax, and that's fine. Like you might just use the control panel, or you might just use a control panel and use it as a headless CMS and like consume it in an iPhone and Android app. And there's a lot of different things that you can do. And now you get to own your own stack. You don't have to pay $500 a month for a headless CMS as a service application. You can just run this yourself.
Right. I just think that the idea that you're implementing here, essentially abstracting away the data layer, again, I think this is probably one of the most important ideas, at least from my opinion, that's in Statamic 3. And I know Patrick is a big Gatsby fan, but I would imagine that kind of appeals to you as well, Patrick?
Yeah, very much. I mean, I do want to ask about GraphQL support, but it does look like some people have made Statamic talk directly to Gatsby.js, because you can go non-GraphQL. But yeah, I mean, just going back to what we were saying about Expression Engine, and I came up with it as well, kind of 2009 through maybe 2011. And there was a time when the templating layer there started to feel, really long in the tooth. And the idea that so much of your software stack is modular and things can be swapped out pretty easily is just really interesting. The idea that, okay, a flat file, if you're actually hitting that, that scale, you could go to Redis, you could go to Mongo, you could go to all these different ways, as long as you fit some agreed upon interface. And same could go for your templating layer. And as you said in the blog post, you don't love Antlers? Okay, use Blade, use Twig, use whatever.
Exactly.
I just love the idea that, I have to think it's going to make you much more agile over the years too.
Yeah.
In terms of what you want to ship with as your defaults, because that's, you almost have to start thinking about, okay, we ship with Antlers by default, but then here's our ready to go adapter for swapping out for Twig or whatever. It's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, well, that specifically, we have a convention. You can just load in extra template language parsers, and you just we'll look at the file name of the file. So like .antlers.html will parse with antlers, .twig.php will load with twig, .blade.php will load with blade. And so there may be certain cases where you want to have one view or one partial use one template language or another because of whatever. As long as you abstract it cleanly.
You've got a developer who's like,
there's no reason why you can't do it that way. I mean, you could also misuse it, right? So that you run the risk of by giving so much flexibility that you can create like a multi-headed beast. But we do our best with documentation and recommendations and best guidelines and screencasts to say like, here, try to take a unified approach, but we can adapt to your tooling and your preferences. Just because we like something doesn't mean you can't use your thing if ultimately it's just a clean abstraction away.
I think flexibility is fantastic, but there also is some value to when someone sits down to work on a project from Statamic, that they know that it's going to be using X, Y, or Z to some extent.
Yeah,
right?
You're absolutely right. And there's a lot of convention around like the naming mechanisms, the patterns, and the locations where things go. So at least you know where to go. Maybe you're not familiar with Twig, but you jump into your views and you see there's Twig views and you go, oh, okay, I guess I got to brush up on Twig. That's not the worst case scenario. If Twig now is like registers in this like vendor export folder in another location that's like compiled with an external app, like that's messy.
Right.
But if we can keep our convention in place and then let you have your customization inside of that, I think that's the best case scenario.
So I promised someone whose name rhymes with chill that I would ask you about Antlers.
Okay.
So first of all, my hat is off to you. I had never thought of these little curly brackets as antlers, but now I can no longer see, when I look at them, I can no longer see a mustache. Yeah. Now all I see is a proud beast with its antlers outstretched. Fantastic. So I mean, it's pretty wild. But my question is, why antlers? Like, why do we have another custom templating language?
Because it let us integrate kind of closer to the metal and to make what you had to learn to use Statamic smaller if you didn't know something already. I mean, that's where...
Was this pre-Twig? Was Twig even around when you
I think Twig was out, but it was really early, and we tried to work with it, and it was really buggy, and we literally couldn't do some of the things that we wanted to do with it at the time. There was, like, Liquid came from, like, the Rails, like, right? The Jekyll Liquid thing. And there's a PHP port now, years later, but that wasn't an option. I didn't want to write something custom. We actually used Lex, which came from Pyro. That's where Antlers started. We forked it. There's like, I don't think there's any original code left, but that's where it started. And what we wanted to be able to do is I really liked the expression engine. I like certain parts of the expression engine templating system where you didn't have to write for eaches and like have to assign temporary variables to get these really long, kind of hard to grok, like, code pairs, like braces. And that's intimidating for someone who just knows HTML and CSS who wants to wire their site up. So if you know HTML, you go like, look, here's what a variable. You see 2 tags, whatever's in that, that's a variable name. Done. You don't have to worry about anything else. Like if you want to get your blog entries, it's collection:blog, done. Like it was very simple. You didn't have to learn new conventions. And that's what I wanted. And that's why we, went with the Antlers. Like, are there things it can't do? Sure. Like there's things that it can do way more tersely than Twig can. And I think it's a lot more readable, if I'm being perfectly honest, but it's preference based. And in V3, you don't have to use it. You can use Twig if you want.
Well, and don't feel called out because I asked Taylor Otwell the same thing about Laravel and Blade. I'm like, why don't you just switch to Twig? And his answer was essentially that, well, there's just so much legacy code, like people would freak out. Like,
that's a thing too.
Yeah, right. But I like that you have the flexibility, and so does Laravel, that if you wanted to swap in a different rendering engine, like, okay, go ahead.
I mean, you inject that.
And what came first? Was it Antlers or the whole? I remember you used to have an aesthetic for Statamic.com with a lot of the great outdoors, and I think the e-commerce Jason's thing was Bison.
Yes.
Which came first? Yeah.
Which came first, that or Antlers? Are you saying?
Or I guess the Antlers or the Wilderness.
Oh, the Wilderness thing came first, and then it was just we had imported the Lex library. We were calling it Lex, I think, the entire V1. And when we rewrote for V2, we decided like there's nothing left. Like it doesn't follow Lex's patterns anymore. Let's just call it our own thing. We'll call it the Antlers parser because it looks like antlers, and our antlers are part of the branding, which has since been
I still think that's
phased out a little bit.
I love the new website. Vaporwave is a thing now. I didn't know the name for this, but you're living the Vaporwave life. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, Vaporwave, like synthwave, retrowave, all that stuff. That is, I mean, I don't know how much you know about me, but that's basically all I do. It's just
the mid 90s were the greatest time to be alive. And this just takes me back.
It just makes me happy. I mean, here's a plug for my synthwave mixtapes on Spotify. Like I have 4 of them, and it's
my God. Thing. I don't know what I'm doing. Wow. I'm probably going to regret this, but you'll have to send me a link. I'll add it to the show notes.
Sure thing. Yeah, I just love it. And I mean, it's kind of a Miami style. There's a lot of different styles in that early 90s, late 80s thing. And I mean, it'll get updated for V3, but it'll still be Vaporwave, like retro 80s, Good. 90s. Yeah, all right,
Jack, this sounds awesome. When is it going to be released?
We don't have a hard launch date yet, but we're working to get into alpha, hopefully in the next week or so. And then we'll have an open beta once we've kind of worked out whatever people run into in alpha. We don't, if there's a problem that 5 people can report 5 times or 500 people report 500, I'd rather work out a couple of kinks quickly. As far as like final commercial launch, I mean, sometime this year. I don't know exactly when. It all depends on how beta goes, but pretty soon. We're getting close.
Andrew, when are you going to launch Statamic?
I don't know.
Are you going to be a Statamagician?
Oh my God. As soon as I can get Jack to write me back, I'll do it. Okay. I'll get to work on it. As soon as that happens.
I'm going to find that email or that tweet or however you reach me.
No, I think I just DM'd you.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Like, I don't care. I'm from New York. Like,
you do because you brought it up.
Very
I feel bad.
I'm insensitive. No, but I brought it up because it actually is something that I'm interested in doing. I think it would be a pretty neat thing, and I'm kind of excited by some of the stuff that you're doing in version 3.
Well, wait till you see what we put on our blog today. Today being Friday, May 10th, even though this will come out next week.
Monday.
It'll come out on Monday.
Something. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Well, that's perfect. Like, if you don't mind, shoot me that link as well as the link to your mixtape.
Sure. Of none of the music that I made, but curated carefully for you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it has some of you in it if you have curated it, right?
Ew.
Patrick, don't make it weird. Don't make it weird, Patrick. What's the matter with
I
you?
think he was just reflecting.
I don't understand it, and I refuse to acknowledge it.
That about wraps it up for another episode of the devMode.fm podcast. Have every episode delivered to your favorite podcast player. Subscribe to our RSS or subscribe via iTunes or Google Play. And if you like what we're doing, leave us a review. You can also follow us on Twitter at devModeFM. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode as well as on Jack's mixtape. Leave us a comment on the devMode.fm website. For the devMode.fm podcast, I'm Andrew Welch.
I'm Patrick Harrington.
And I'm Matt Stein.
And a special thanks to Jack McDade.
Arr! Oh, that's terrible. Why'd I do that?
Well, that was cool. I really do. Antlers is very clever, and I'm very angry that I've looked at that for so long and I've never thought of antlers.
It doesn't really matter. It's not like I'm making money by coming up with that.
But it's still clever, and I appreciate